OCO, Dakwadoa Galen Grits, Chalasi, Sadalawa'i, Degegai, St. Louis, Wado. Hello, my name is Galen Grits. I am a Cherokee from St. Louis. I am a real, live, card-carrying member of the Cherokee Nation who is not an artifact or in a museum. Who left that latch off that chicken coop? There were 15 million to 50 million Native Americans in what we call the lower 48. Obviously, it's hard to know for sure. They didn't do census back in those days, but there were a lot of damn Indians, as Custer said at one time. Today, in the state of Missouri, we're 0.4% of the population, which is less than half. Most states have about 2%. Obviously, there are states like New Mexico, Arizona, and Oklahoma that have a higher percentage. But we're very, very hard to find in Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, and Kentucky, as we do not have any federally recognized tribes, which there are 574 of. Now, tribes are tribal governments. They're not necessarily on reservations. There's about 376 reservations. The difference is tribes have sovereignty over their own lands. Reservations are basically held by the federal government and are administered by them, which is all kinds of bureaucracy and traditional and historical problems with that. However, the majority of people in the United States that are Native no longer live on reservations. There's a problem with that. For the modern Indian, we tend to be looked at as historically stuck in a wrinkle in time. And people think even more so when you're not on the res that somehow you're not real. However, that is a one-way street. I know plenty of white people that do not live in Massachusetts who do not dress like pilgrims, and I look at them as being real white people. This state at one time was completely different than what it is now. I know when people like to go hiking or on walks in the woods, they say, oh, this must have been like it was for the Native people. However, when Marquette and Joliet came down the Mississippi from basically Wisconsin, they were French explorers. It was exactly 350 years ago this year. So much has changed because of the things that have happened since then. For one thing, 85% of the wetlands of the state have disappeared, and 99% of the prairies. So just compare that to 13,000 years that Native people were here and lived in relationship to the earth, to the last 350, where all you have to do is turn on the TV or read the newspaper and find out how we have did the climate and the earth towards disaster. It didn't take long. But having those wetlands and having those prairies was a completely different thing. In fact, you can say that when Native people were here, it's almost like we were on a different planet when we were here by ourselves. Plants were different, the animals were different. There were beaver, there were elk, there were otter, there were bear in this state. Even the sounds were different, and the night sky was different. You could step out anywhere in the state of Missouri and see the Milky Way. And the Milky Way is so important in the creation stories. For the Osage who lived here, that's the path that their dead walk. And they would be reminded of that every night just by walking outside. So we have changed the whole feeling of this state. But let's go back to that different planet when people were here by themselves, the Native people. We did not have courts, we did not have taxes, we did not have police or standing armies. We didn't have 7-year wars or 100-year wars or 30-year wars. Those were things that Europeans did. We didn't go on crusades thousands of miles away. To the contrary, we had a very common game called the ball game. And quite often that was called the little brother of war. So instead of fighting each other over disputes between clans or tribes, we played a game. And the outcome of that game decided the outcome of that argument or those concerns. In addition, we didn't have concentrated wealth with nobles, kings, the church. We did not have religious intolerance. And as far as eating, we had plenty of food. Because of the wetlands that refreshed the earth every spring, It's kind of like Easter for the Christians. The earth was reborn. There was new food, new nutrients, new things stuck in those wetlands as they disappeared. Plenty of protein for our people. And then, of course, we had plenty of food to eat as far as vegetable food. Example would be the Three Sister meal. We had nuts and berries and things that we could gather. It only took about 8 hours a week for Native people to get the food that they needed, the proteins and the calories. Now compare that to today's schedule, where you usually work 40 hours or even more, and sometimes both people in the house work, and then sometimes you have to drive to work and drive home, and certainly drive to the grocery store and come home and unload all that things that you just bought. We had time to be with our family. We had time to be with our community, and that was so important. The other thing is, we didn't have written records, we didn't have computer chips, so everything that we needed to know, not only about the outside world, but about our own culture, was through the tribe and through our memories. Therefore, elders, people like myself, who's 71, we become very important. We are the Google of our times, because if you want to know something, you ask an elder. How do I fix this boo-boo? How do I train my dog? How do I get along with my father? How do I string a bow? How do I give thanks to the Creator? All these things you learn by talking to an elder. So therefore, we were embedded in the community. We weren't warehoused in assisted living homes or retirement homes. So some very big differences. The thing that happened to us was removal. And what happens with removal is you're removed and your culture's destroyed. So it's kind of odd now and again to get requests from people, can you come and talk to us about your spiritual practices, or about basket weaving, or about these things. So much of that has been lost, broken, and misplaced, or taken away on purpose. So it's a difficult thing to do, to come out of the woodwork and just do those things when so much of it has been destroyed. And actually very deliberately. So there's kind of a weirdness to that at times. And I think sometimes the idea that Native people are stoic is we just can't react fast enough to the weirdness of the whites, the things that they expect, the things that they ask, the things how they see us. Originally, we were seen as savages. And that identity still kind of goes through. Because in the Declaration of Independence, with the complaints against King George III, the very last thing that they mention is, and the only time that Native people are mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, is the fact that we are savages, and we are known for the violence that we attack anybody with. And that's kind of a theme that goes through, becomes a foundation of Manifest Destiny, that we're vermin, that we need to be gotten rid of. And of course that carries over into Nazi Germany eventually with their Lieberswarm, or living space. It's the same thing. But in any case, later, after the massacre of Wounded Knee, of women, women, children, and old people in 1890, by that time, it's all done. And so now we need a new identity. And so in the movies, we become, well, the defeated enemy. And that's one reason why all the attack helicopters of the U.S. Army are named after Indians. Blackhawks, Apaches, things like that. You make your defeated enemy big and strong, that makes you big and strong. The other things that we did, we don't see it so much now, but we hawked a lot of products for the American economy from about the 1890s till 2020 was when the maiden was taken off the Land O'Lake butter. But prior to that, back in the 40s, there was these horrible caricatures of Indians, very red, usually with feathers, big noses, hawking notebooks, hawking tablets for school kids, hawking tires, all kinds of different things. It's kind of like what the blacks faced with their image being used as Aunt Jemima, or eating watermelons, things like that. So that has kind of faded away some, and of course we still have it in the names of professional teams, but a lot of that has gone away. But we did that for a long time. We were shilling for American corporations. And then we have become kind of noble, as I mentioned, and stoic. So there's the bad Indian and the good Indian. And then we can provide comic relief. Just think of some Bugs Bunny cartoons or F Troop, things of that nature. And lately, we have become kind of a super environmentalist and very spiritual for some reason or another. And people are saddling us with that. And there's always the thing of being depressed, because all the numbers that you see about alcoholism and death and incarceration, those are much higher for Native folks. And that's true. That's an identity. But since 1975, when things changed by giving sovereignty back to the tribes after an age of termination, there has been a real resilience. And it's hard for people that aren't Native to realize that, and the natives that don't live close to the tribes. But I've had the opportunity to visit many tribes in the last few years, and there's a huge amount of energy, positive energy. People are educated and passionate, and things are happening. So there's a lot of hope. But keep in mind, there's been a lot of damage as well. In St. Louis, we have some things that are going on as far as some cultural institutions and universities. They're doing more programming, and we're trying to get it out to the public and to people that things are going on. But things are very, very deeply buried here. Because we don't have tribes, we don't tend to run into Native groups. I didn't know any Native people when I graduated from Parkway Central High School years and years, many moons ago. But today I know Native people in the St. Louis area. But still, at only 0.4%, it's hard to find people. And with the business of their lives, it's hard to get together and form a community. But I am hopeful that we will come out from the shadows that we've been cast into. And I think there are a lot of things moving in that direction. So in many ways, I'm not supposed to be here. It was against the law in Missouri after they removed the Osage for Indians to be here. And they crushed our languages. They crushed our religion. We didn't get the right to vote till 1924. We didn't get the right to religion till 1978. The irony of the languages. You have the boarding schools where our kids are being kidnapped and tortured, and sometimes sewing needles stuck into their tongues for using their languages. At the same time, that government is using our languages in two wars, World War I and World War II, for code talking. And I've heard anywhere from 13 to 30 different tribes. We know about the Navajo, but the truth of the matter is it was so effective in World War I, the government kept it under secret wraps until World War II. And other tribes use their languages. So you have our wee ones, our children, being tortured and abused, not to use the language. On the other hand, you have the government using those languages to save its soldiers. So those kind of ironies just abound in Native American history and the story. But keep in mind, Native history is American history. And the fact that we ignore it is a real shame, because it's fascinating. And you see the whole panorama of human experience in it. The thing is, it is a tragedy in the past. And so when you tell a tragic tale, there are things in it that will make you sad. But the end result is, it is something that we are coming back from. So somehow or another, I flew that coop. I didn't crawl, I learned to run.